Hello everyone, my name is Jana and I'm a CG specialist at Chaos Group. Now you should see my screen. If not, please drop a line in the chat box. So today I'm going to talk about rendering exteriors with V-Ray, and my goal for this webinar is to show you how you can use V-Ray from the very first concept ideas to the final look and rendered images. I'm going to talk about the challenges in my project, give you some solutions, and as well as some tips and tricks that you can use later on in your work as well. And as Thomas said, if you have any questions during my presentation, please write them down in the question box, and after the presentation, I'll be happy to answer them. So here, a short overview what I'm going to cover today. In introduction to this project, this exterior project. Then I'm going to talk about the concept design, how important it is, and show you my approach to developing this certain building over here. Then I'm going to show you how I have simulated a plastic model inside 3ds Max using V-Ray. Then I'm going to talk about the lighting, the GI, and how you can render flicker-free animation. Then I'm going to show you how I have set some of the materials in my scene and how I have added the trees and how I scatter them. And at the end, I'm going to render a final image and show you the pre-rendered animation. All right. Let me say a few words about this project. The target was to design a business building with office space, cantina, and gaming areas so the staff can relax during the breaks. For developing a certain look, we will mostly start from a drawing board, creating some different sketches. Although V-Ray is well known for rendering photorealistic images, now I'm going to show you how you can use V-Ray at a very early conceptual stage. So a design starts with an idea, and this is the concept. All following steps are based on that concept. That's why it's very important to have a good one. Let's now jump to 3ds Max, and here you can see that I have created something like a city, and this is because a building stands never by itself, never isolated. It's always surrounded by some other buildings or roads, etc. So during the concept phase, you can explore multiple options and experiment with different shapes and forms until you have reached your expectations and those from the client. To visualize my experiments, I'm going to start the V-Ray RT, which will provide interactive feedback as I work. So, and now I'm going to unhide one by one my conceptual stages from the very first one, which is this building over here. Those are basically very, very low poly buildings, just an ideas. Let's say this like so. Then this one was with a very high tower and a circular base. Then the next one is a little bit lower. It is a modular building with an organic forms. Then I had something like this. It's again modular building, and this form can probably remind you at the Burj Al Arab in Dubai. And then let me show you my next concept. It was this one. And it's very important, since we are inside 3ds Max, and have this opportunity to jump in the perspective view and take a look at the skyline at our city, because the skyline is very important to the big cities like New York, Shanghai, or Dubai, etc. It's important to take a look if your building fits into the skyline, fits into the city. And using this approach, I have tried some more concepts, and this was the concept before my last one. And here I like this small housing over here, and here I could place the cantina and the relax area on the second and the third floor. What I didn't like was the tower, and this is because the other buildings are a little bit more cubic form. So I ended with this concept. This was my final one. I kept the modularity and the C form of the base, as well as the small housing. What I did change, this was the main tower, the main business tower, and you can see that I have a little bit of detail here, and so you can see the repetitivity of the floors. So this was my final concept, and now I should represent it one way. And mostly concept idea starts from a piece of paper with some sketches or so, and here in V-Ray we can simulate these effects. And at the moment I don't need this photorealism in my image. So what I'm going to do is to disable the GI here, and I don't need the GI. And because I'm using at the moment the V-Ray Sun and Sky system, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit later on, you can now see these very dark shadows, which I don't like. So I will disable the sun as well as disable my sky. And now I'm going to show you a trick which I use on this very early stage of the concept, and this is that I often use the V-Ray Ambient Light. So let me enable this. And now I'm simulating something like a GI. I have light all in my scene. So this is the advantage of the V-Ray Ambient Light, that it gives you uniform lighting in the whole scene, and V-Ray does not trace any shadows, so we are rendering super fast. But you can clearly see that I have lost my detail, and to get this back, I'm going to use the V-Ray dirt texture, and it goes into the light map. And now you can see that I have something like ambient occlusion, I'm simulating the shadows, and I have my details back. So this was the first thing. The second thing is because I want to have a sketchy look and a cartoony look, I can use the V-Ray edges texture. And the V-Ray edges texture shows the edges of a polygonal mesh. And I'm going to plug this in my material. And actually this was my very first step so that my building can pop up. I have used another material just for my building, and now I'm giving it even more detail by using the V-Ray edges texture. So I can change the color, the thickness, it's very easy to use. But if I want to have this effect on the other buildings, I should go and plug it in all of the materials in order to have this effect. And one more thing, that the V-Ray edges texture is geometry dependent. So if you have modeled your building not so clear, then you could probably have an edges which you don't want to have. And there is another way to achieve this effect, this cartoony effect. Let me show you this. It's called V-Ray Tune. You can add it from here, and I have already created one. So I will activate it, and I'm going to use the production render mode because the V-Ray Tune is not supported in the RT. But now you can see the effect. We have this cartoonish effects on the whole scene. But since I just want to have the effect, this detail on my building, I have this include objects list. I will click on OK and pick my building. Now, if I render, I'm going to have the tune effect just on my building, which is pretty nice. I can change the color. Let's say I want that my building is more dominant. I can pick a reddish color. Then I can change the thickness of the lines, let's say 3 pixels. And if I want to have just the outline of the building, then I can hide the inner edges over here and render once more. So here it is. And you can control, let me show you just this thing. You can control your lines with the normal threshold. So the V-Ray tune is geometry independent. V-Ray measures the distance between the different normals, and if I decrease this value, I will have less from the lines. Just that you know that as well. Okay. And I can map the color, the width, distortion, and the opacity of the V-Ray tune. And for this, I'm going to use this gradient over here to map the color and render. And here is the effect. So this is in mapped as a screen mode, in a screen mode. All right, and all this gives you creative freedom to present your concept without setting any lights or materials. And now let's imagine that the client wants to see what's inside our building and how is the placement inside it. And what we should do is section view. And there are different ways to do that. But for me as an artist, the most easiest way and quickest way to do that is to use the V-Ray clipper. Let me just open my next scene. Here it is. And the V-Ray clipper looks like this, and you can create it from here, V-Ray clipper. And this is a tool which came with V-Ray 3.0, and with 3.1 we have improved it, so it works in the RT. So I'm going to start the RT. So here. And what the clipper does is that it cuts the geometry during render time. So let me enable it so you can see the effect. And it is a shading effect. So your geometry will stays, the V-Ray clipper will not modify your geometry. And at the moment, I'm cutting all of my scene, all the objects in my scene, and I want to cut just my building. So here is an exclude include list, and I'm going to select everything from my building and click on include. And now the V-Ray clipper is cutting just just my building. Okay, now I can find the position which suits for me. So here it is. And yes, it's very useful because it fills the holes for me. So you can see this reddish color over here, and it comes from here. And I can even assign another material to it, in this case this V-Ray material, and I can add a noise texture to it. Let's go and add a noise texture. And now I have something like concrete. So here it is. And there is another option called Use Object Material. And if I click on it, you see that V-Ray that the clipper will cut the object and keeps the material of the cut object. And if you want that you have this from V-Ray that it keeps the whitening conditions in the building, you can go and click on camera rays only. So if I click this option, V-Ray will handle this building as a closed space. So what this is that I can have separate light setup inside of my building, and it is very useful for exteriors like this, because I can have my sunny day outside, and at the same time I can have lights or night mood inside of the building. And the V-Ray clipper can be animated as well, and I have pre-rendered an animation, so I can show it to you. It's this one, and you can use more than one clipper at the same time, and I have created this animation. So very easy to use. Let's jump to my presentation. So we covered the V-Ray clipper, and since we have already our concept, the next step could be to model a plastic model of the building, a plastic representation. And I have Googled some building models over here, and you can see there are lots of them. And here I have lights inside it, and in this one as well. And I made something like this in 3ds Max using V-Ray, and this is my panel image. So I can show you my scene in 3ds Max and how I did that. So again, I'm going to start the RT, and at the moment inside my building I have lights, and to show you this I switched to wireframe, but right now I don't see any light coming through the surface, and this is because I'm using this standard V-Ray material, and because I want to simulate this paper look, I will use the V-Ray two-sided material, which is the most suitable one for situations like this. And as soon as I have applied it, you can see the difference. And what the V-Ray two-sided material does is that it allows seeing the light on the backside of the object, and it makes a mixture between the front material and the back material, and I can control this mixture through this translucency option over here. If I increase it, I'm going to see more from the back material and less from the front, and if I decrease it, I will not see so much from the back material and from the whitening inside of my building. I will open my final scene to the plastic model so you can see what I have done. So yes, I have added rectangular lights inside my building, and here I have added some detail like those small trees here and very small benches with a wooden texture, and here I have placed a ruler so everybody can tell how big the model is. And this is my final result. So let's talk about lightning and GI and how I can render a flicker-free animation. For this purpose, I'm going to open my next scene, which is that one. And again, I'm going to start the RT so we can see what's going on in the scene. Okay, so you can see that my image is pretty dark, and this is first because I don't have any lights in the scene, and V-Ray uses the default lighting, and second because I have exposure on my camera. So usually when I create exterior scene, I use the V-Ray Sun and Sky system because it is very flexible, and just by changing the position of the sun, I have different lighting conditions. Let me just create a sun, and V-Ray will ask me if I want to create a sky as well. Yes, I want. And this is the result, what I have. All right, I can see clearly the sky, but here my building is in the shadow, and it's completely black. And it is black because I don't have enabled my GI yet. So let me show you this. Here, GI, it is off. And let's say that I'm not sure which GI solutions should I use for this particular scene. And V-Ray has different methods of calculating the GI. What can I do? Well, I can go over here and click on the V-Ray quick settings. And here I can pick between 4 different presets. And because I have exterior, I'm going to click on the exterior preset. And now V-Ray, and here I can find the most suitable GI combinations for calculating the GI for exteriors. I have 2 accurate methods, so brute force light cache, and 2 fast ones, so Irides Map and White Cache. And I'm going to use the Irides Map and brute force because I want to render fast. All right, now we are ready to find the best position for our sun. So a little bit lower probably. All right, and let's take a look at the settings. At the moment I'm using the very first sky model inside V-Ray, and I can play with the intensity multiplier, let's say 0.5, and by decreasing the intensity multiplier, I will affect not only the sun, but the sky as well. I can play with the turbidity, so everybody knows that in the air there are very small, tiny particles like a dust, and if I increase the turbidity, there will be more of these dust particles in the air. But what about if I want to be able to lower the intensity just to the sky? What can I do then? I should go and switch to the CIE clear, and now I can affect the intensity multiplier and the sky multiplier separately. So I can have very, very dark sky if I want, and intensity of the multiplier of the sun set to 1. I can have overcast image as well. So what I should do is go back to the default value here and lower down the intensity, like 0.1. And now I have an overcast image. But since I want to have a happy sunny day, I'm going to switch back to CIE clear with the default values here as well. And I'm already done with the lighting, but I missed something, and this is that in the real world there are always buildings which are higher than mine, and I have used here a small trick, and I have added blockers. Let me show you this. Here they are. And those blockers stays in front of the sun and throws this shadow on my building. And now it looks better to me because I have some variation in the lighting. And I have here my camera set, so I have found the composition which I want to have, and also I have animated the camera. So I made something like fly through. Here it is. And now I'm going to show you how you can render a flicker-free animation. So here I'm going to render an image. And I'm using the Irides Map and brute force. And after V-Ray is rendered the image, here I'm going to see how big my Irides map is and how many samples we have in it. Just give it a moment until it's ready. All right, here it is. So here are the samples, and my Irides map is 4.5 megabyte. And V-Ray keeps this at the moment in the RAM, so I can go and save the map. Click on Save. I'm going to give it a name, Irides Map 01. And now I can go and pick this map, and let me clear this. So now if I render, V-Ray will take the Irides map from my file because I have cached it. But what will happen if I go at the end of my animation? Let's render the last frame. And you can immediately see that we have some artifacts over here. And this is completely normal because an Irides map is calculated for the camera position. And to prove my point, I'm going to use a tool called Irides Map Viewer. And if you guys don't know about it, you can find it over here in your Chaos Group folder, V-Ray, 3ds Max, and in your tools. So here, Irides Map. I'm going to start it, and here I can preview my Irides map. So it looks like this. Those are the samples. And this is my Irides map for the very first frame. And because I wanted to render the last frame, here you can clearly see there is no information. So it's normal to have these artifacts. So what can I do? Well, let's render another map. So go here, single. I'm going to click on don't render final image because I just want to have the GI cached. Okay, here it is. Then I will save it, give it a name, save. And let's take a look at the map. So I'm going to load the second one. Okay, now we have information for the last frame, and for the very first we don't. What can I do? I can go over here and add the first one. So now you can see I have information here as well as here, and I can go and save this. Let's say Irides map 1+2, save. Okay, let me now show you how big the map is. So here we have 1+2, which is exactly the size of this one, the first one, plus the second one. So you can use this approach if you want, but there is a much more easier one, and this is by using this option over here in the Irides map, use camera path. So I will click this and render once more. What V-Ray will do is a single Irides map for the whole animation. I'm going to save it. Say use camera path, save, and let's take a look again here at the size. So this was the old one, and here you can see the new one with the use camera path option. It's smaller than this one, and this is because using the approach which I have showed you before, you will have, adding those two, you will have overlapping samples, and here we don't. And because we are rendering just a single irradiance map, I can afford to go higher with the settings of the irradiance map. I will pick the high animation, and I will increase the subdivisions. So let's say 100, and I will render this. It will take a minute or two probably, but it's totally worth it, and I'm going to show you why. Let me just start the Irides Map Viewer again. Where it is? So on my next screen. So here, I'm going to open the last one. So here it is, and I have pre-rendered a high detailed irradiance map, so we don't wait so much time. And let me open this. Probably stop the rendering. And here it is. Flips, and you can see how much detail I have. I have so many samples, so much information, and this is for the whole animation, from the very first frame to the very last one. Okay? And if you want to render with white cache, so not brute force, but white cache, make sure that you click here on the use camera path option as well. So V-Ray will try to place the samples during the animation on the same spots, so you won't have any flickering in the animation. And now I want to show you the end result. So this is my flicker-free animation. I have used this approach with a detailed irradiance map, just a single one. All right. So let's jump back to my presentation. We covered all of this, and now I want to show you how I have set some of my materials in the scene. And for this purpose, I'm going to open my next scene, which is this one over here. All right. And again, I'm going to start the RT. And in the real world, there is no such thing as perfect shape, perfectly round shape or flat shape or perfect materials. And to have more realistic images, more natural images, we should do some changes in our we should add more variation, more detail in our image. So the first thing is that the glass has a little bit of curvature, and this is because of the framing, the window framing. And to simulate this effect, I'm going to use a bump texture. So this is the material of the glass, and I'm going to save this image so we can compare afterwards. So save. And here I'm using this noise texture, so I'll go over here and plug it in the bump map. And what I have here is that I have variation in the reflection, but you can see that something's wrong with the refraction. I have here this mismatch. Let me explain you why this is happening. So I have here some pictures which I want to show you. So this ones. And this is the glass in the 3D program. And to have a better look, make sure that you have thickness to the glass and not just a single side glass. And here is the example. So this is the glass, then the light falls on it, and this is the reflection, and then those rays are for the refraction. And let's see what's going on in the real world. Well, we have something like this. I must say that I have exaggerated the effect, but I want to make sure that you can clearly see what's going on. And the light's falling on the surface, and we have variation in the reflection rays. All right, and this is here our case. So we are using this bump texture, and because of the thickness and the normals of our surface, we will get something like this in the refraction. And this is why we have this mismatch in the refraction. And there is a very simple way to fix it. In the material, I can go over here and unlock the index of refraction for the reflections, and over here type for the refractions 1. And this is pretty much. Now I have variation in the reflections, which I wanted to have, and the perfectly normal refractions. So this is it. And if you go on Google and type glass tower, you will see that there is a lot of variation in the color of the glass. And you can achieve this effect very easy using the V-Ray multi-subtexture. So here it is, and I'm going to plug it in the reflection and in the refraction map. So like this. And I will say it again, I have exaggerated the effect. In my final render, I haven't used so much saturated colors. Keep in mind that mostly less is more, so probably something like this, just a variation of the colors. All right. And now I'm going to show you how I have set the texture for the floor. And this is my material. And because I want to use a tileable texture, a texture with a tiling, and I don't want to see the seams, the tiling on the texture, I'm using this trick. So my texture, my tile texture goes here in a tiles map over here, and this tiles map goes in another tiles map, so here, and finally I will plug this into the diffuse map. So now I will not see the tiling of my texture, and let me probably jump with the perspective so you can see it's even better. So here, and I have variation in the colors of the tiles here on the floor. And a similar technique I have used for the grass materials. So I have used this time a noise texture like this one. And in this noise texture, I have plugged two different kinds of grass texture. So the first one is tiled 12 times, and this is my second one. And this is the result, what I have here. So, all right, let's talk about proxies. And you all know that in exterior scenes, we have a lot of trees, bushes, etc. And they can have a lot of polygons, and so that slows down the viewport and the rendering. So in situations like this, I always use the V-Ray proxy. I'm pretty sure that all of you know what the proxy is and how it works, because the V-Ray proxy is a tool which came with the very first version of V-Ray. Let's jump to my next scene, because I want to show you it is proxy creation. Yes, here it is. That we have improved the V-Ray proxy. All right, fine. So here I have this tree, and I want to export it as a V-Ray proxy. I have clicked on the right mouse click and then V-Ray mesh export. And now I should decide if I want to export this mesh as a export each selected or all of it. And because I want to export the whole tree, I have picked this option over here. And previously, let me switch it to this one. Previously, you have in the viewport as a representation a polygon cloud, and it was not so easy to place it. So what we have done is to use another mesh. In this case, I have created another low polygonal tree, and I can go and say, okay, in the viewport, I want to see this one, and I can click on it. But now we have new preview types, and you can find it over here, and I will click on this one, refine clustering quality. So now with faces in preview, I can define by myself how many polygons should I see in my viewport. And if I click on OK, and so I have clicked this option as well. So V-Ray will delete, after the export, will delete the actual mesh and will import the proxy for me. So I will click OK, and you will see the result. And here it is. In no time, I have a perfect representation of my proxy. And if I want, I can preview the whole mesh or leave it like so. And I don't know if you have seen this, but I have export point clouds as well. And what this option does is that by the export of the proxy, V-Ray will export for each vertex a disk, a small disk, which will be facing the camera afterwards. And if you have many trees and they are away from the camera and they occupy just 2 or 3 pixels, V-Ray will not load the whole proxy, because you won't be able to see it in 4 or 5 pixels, but it will load this cloud, this points cloud. And if you have export this, make sure that you have clicked here, use if presented point cloud. And this way you can save a little bit more time by the rendering. And now I'm going to show you how I have placed my proxies. Let's jump back in my final scene. Here it is. There are different ways to place the proxies, or to place to scatter the proxies, let's say it that way. And I have used here a very simple way, and this is by using, let me just pick it, 3ds Max particle system. So here is my particle system, and as an emitter, I have used the green grass, because I don't want to have any trees on the windows or on the road, and I have added a little bit of variation in the rotation, but that's all. And all right, then now I want to use the proxies which I have created, and just with the particle system of 3ds Max I cannot do that. So we have added a tool called the V-Ray instancer. Here it is. And it works with particle system, and I have edited it over here. And then you can load the V-Ray proxies. So I have added all of the trees, all of the different trees which I have showed you before in the last scene. So here they are. Okay, here you have, and so V-Ray will create for each particle. We'll take a tree from here and place it over there. You can play with the randomizer, so to randomize the trees, and how much should be rendered. You can lower here the count of the proxies. And now I'm going to, yes, you can see that I have textured the building and all of it, and I have added a little bit more detail. And I guess here there should be a tree. You won't be able to see the proxies, but as I render, you see that V-Ray will load the proxies. Let's see. Yes, here. So in the viewport, I don't see the tree, but it is here. And one more thing, if you want to randomize, because you can see that here I have different color in the leaves, I have used material by element to have this variation. And actually this, let me show you. So here, this is my final image, and probably I can open it. Here it is. So yes, this is my final image. I have used all of the techniques which I have to show you in my presentation. So here for the grass, for the windows, I have a little bit of variation in the colors, and here you can see the reflections that are a little bit different. And what else? Yes, here the tiling, you see that I have different tiles as well as color, and I cannot see any tiling. Okay, and the last thing what I want to show you is the final animation, and this is this here. And you can see that I have added motion blur to the camera and render with it using a pre-cached Irides map. And this was pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed the webinar. Thank you very much for your attention.